Chapter 20. The Residence of Dr. Raemond Morningstar, London, England, June 6th, 1889. Jamie leant their head on Athena's shoulder. Having someone else there, someone so real and so close to them, it was something they wanted to savor, something they had taken for granted all this time. They were almost scared, as childlike as the fear seemed in their mind, that if they were left alone, Athena would simply disappear, and Jamie would find themselves back in the cold, dark basement. He looked out the windows of the carriage, watching as the sun began to set and the outskirts of London rolled into view. "What are we actually doing here, Athena?" Jamie asked as he watched the lamplighters go about their business outside. "What's the plan?" Athena chewed on his lower lip. In the light of the setting sun streaming in through the window, parts of their face without pigment seemed to be nothing but a glowing mass of light, bleached of shape and color by the heavens, their eye simply a red shadow in its socket. "I don't know. We need to help Ray. I know that, but are we just, I don't know, going to barge in there? What about the others? If they truly are as infected and dangerous as you said, then..." "I don't know, Jamie," Athena said. There was an empty, dull tone to their usually playful voice. "I don't know how much we can help them right now, especially if Sherbet is willing to do this to themselves." Jamie sat up and faced their friend. "We can't just do nothing, Athena. Easton's my sibling, and Mr. Mistvale is... I'm not saying we do nothing at all, it's just..." Athena shook their head. "We're just kids, Jamie. I don't even know how to help them. Dr. Morningstar is the least affected. Or he's affected differently, I think, based on the way the mole is growing. If we can just get him out, take him somewhere else, maybe he can, I don't know, help us make some kind of cure." Jamie nodded, leaning back against them. "I suppose. And if we are too late? If Ray is as bad as the others?" Athena shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He took a vial of purple liquid from his pocket and looked at it in the sunlight. "Then..." He let out a soft, slow breath. "Then we run, Jamie." "Promise me you'll be safe?" Jamie asked. Athena didn't answer. Jamie placed their hand on hers as the city sprouted up around them, blocking out the sun. "Athena, look at me." Athena looked up into his friend's eyes. "When I was in that cellar, I thought I would die without seeing you again," Jamie said, pursing their lips as they searched for the right words. "But now we're here, together again. And neither of us are going to lose the other again. So promise me you'll stay safe. That if we need to, you will run." Athena nodded slowly. "I promise," she said quietly. A small smile tugged at their lips. "I would have been safe regardless, though. I've got you to protect me, like you always do." Jamie relaxed a little bit. "I try my best, even if you've been protecting me more recently," they smiled. "Thank you." The carriage slowed to a halt, the wheels bouncing on the cobblestones. "Here we are." Athena opened the door of the carriage. They placed one of the vials of potion back in their pocket, handing the other to Jamie, and stepped out onto the street. He passed a handful of money to the cab driver. "Could you please take our belongings to the address I gave you earlier? Tell Mr. Warwood they belong to me, and he'll know where to take them. Oh, and ask him to be careful. There are breakables inside." "As you wish," the driver nodded. With a crack of a whip, the carriage pulled off into the darkening street, leaving Athena and Jamie alone on the pavement outside Ray's home. The lamplighters had already passed this section of town, and the dull glow of the streetlights clung to the fog which flowed through the main streets in serpentine tendrils. The street itself was far away from London's centre, and many of the buildings which surrounded it were ones of industry, factories and offices closed and abandoned for the night. The road seemed unnaturally quiet and strangely normal, given the terrible events happening just beyond these walls. The only sign of anything strange was the aggressive flickering of lights beyond the curtains of Ray's home, flashes of purple and gold dancing in the window panes. Beyond that, it was as if there were nothing out of the ordinary going on at all. Without ceremony, Athena opened the door. The moment it swung open, a cacophony of sound assaulted the youth's ears. Thousands of screaming, shrieking voices echoed out into the streets, and above it all, amplified over the noise by some unknown means, was the bellowing chanting of Dr. Raemond Morningstar. Beyond the door was another world, so entirely disconnected from the city beyond that it felt surreal and nauseating to even look up into the house. Stepping over the threshold of the building itself was a challenge as a strong wind emanating from an unknown source attempted to blow the pair back out onto the pavement. After clawing their way inside, the door slammed shut behind Jamie and Athena with a resounding boom that would have been terribly loud were it not muted by the symphony of screeching from deeper within the house. As the assistants rushed through the halls, weaving between once empty walls now covered with the scratching and scribbled markings, there was a terrible, sickening, ripping sound. It was the sound of metal being torn apart by sheer force, a thunder crack which toppled trees and shook mountains. A gunshot directly beside one's ear as a bullet ripped through bone and flesh and brains. Skin pulled taut, tearing limb from limb. A blast of blinding light flooded the hall from the study, momentarily stunning the pair and almost knocking them backwards with the accompanying force. As they fought forwards towards the study, a breath caught in Jamie's throat. Ray was floating, suspended in the air a few inches above the ground over a wide circle etched into the floor. The runes and geometric shapes carved into the wood shifted and turned and changed, pulsing with purple light and spinning around the historian, as did the markings on the walls, which ebbed and flowed like the shifting tides. Occasionally a glowing letter would peel itself off the wall, the disembodied rune floating in the air as it drifted past Ray to the room's center. And in front of their mentor, there was a crack. Not simply a crack in the floor or the walls, but a crack in reality. A deep, open wound in the ground like a canyon gaping into the vastness of space stretched out before them. As Ray continued to chant, the wound began to stretch, revealing more of the starless black void beyond. Shapes moved about on the other side, their dark forms barely visible, the owners of the disembodied screams. Long, spider-like fingers forced their way through the tear, flailing and scratching, attempting to rip it further open, grasping at the world beyond. Long, blackened nails dug into the wooden floor, carving into it as they clawed outwards desperately. As the hole widened, more voices joined Ray in his chanting, and Jamie and Athena noticed the others, finally stepping out from the shadows into the purple light. The language which spilled from the mouths of the four scientists was dizzying and unfamiliar, and as their voices filled the face, the chasm's growth continued. There was something else too, on the other side, beyond the garbled screaming of the creatures. A voice, echoing and distant but distinct. Jamie clamped their hands over their ears as the voice burrowed into their skull, their mind beginning to buckle under the pressure of it, their consciousness being dragged too far underwater. They felt a sickening wetness beneath their fingers as blood began to pool in their palms, trickling from their ears. Athena, blood flowing down his neck from his own ears, stepped shakily into the room. "Ray!" she screamed over the noise. Ray failed to notice, his eyes locked on the rift in front of him, continuing to chant with his arms raised and his feet dangling in the air. David, Easton, and Sherbet, however, did notice. David made a movement towards Athena, but before he could make it too close, the portal widened even further and released a new wave of light and sound. The temperature of the room plummeted as all of them were knocked to the ground by the tremor. All except for Ray, who towered above them as they fought for their footing. Athena launched himself across the ground, grabbing onto Ray's shirt with one hand and trying to pull him away from the center of the circle. "Ray!" Athena screamed, although their voice was lost in the infinite noise. She pulled herself in front of Ray, looking up into his eyes which stared down blankly, seeing right through her. The green infected eye glowed and pulsed in time with the runes, which now flowed freely from the walls, solid yet two-dimensional, out of place in the physical dimension they found themselves in. "Ray, stop this!" The purple film over Ray's working eye seemed to thin, and the slit pupil of his green eye thinned in turn. His chanting staggered, a hesitance in the cadence of the song, its musicians stumbling over the notes. Before Athena could say anything else, David launched himself across the room, tackling them out of the way and wrestling them to the ground. "What do you think you'll do?" Ugh! David was knocked out of the way as Jamie slammed into his side, sending both of them toppling towards the rift. One of the grasping hands grabbed David around the ankle, far too many joints wrapping themselves around his leg and beginning to slowly pull him closer to the ever-widening portal. Jamie scrambled away and pulled himself shakily to his feet, just in time to receive a punch to the stomach from Easton, who tried to pin them back against a wall. Seeing the twisting purple veins so clearly embedded in their sibling's face made Jamie want to throw up. Easton said something through gritted teeth, probably something they thought was witty, Jamie gathered from their smirk. The sound was buried in the noise, and whatever effect it may have had on their sibling's struggle was completely lost. Jamie had never won a fight against Easton. Not in the 12 years they had lived in Arboreal Manor together. Not in the years before that, when they had lived on the streets of London. It took all of Jamie's remaining strength to even hold their own, fueled only by a drive to protect Ray and Athena rather than themselves. While Jamie wrestled Easton against the wall, Athena once again dragged themselves to Ray, standing between their mentor and the portal which had grown dangerously wide. An army of creatures looked as if they were trying to force their way out now. Distorted, shadowy bodies pressed against the canvas of reality, the darkness stretching across their twisted figures, rippling and bending like fabric around their shapeless forms. Athena leapt at Ray, wrapping their arms around his middle as they knocked him from the circle, and the two crashed down from the air, slamming into the shifting wood of the floor. Ray's chanting was cut off abruptly as his body crumpled under Athena, and she tried desperately to prop him against a wall. His infected eye still glowed green, but in the other there was a look of recognition, sight piercing the purple sheen for the first time since Athena's arrival. "Athena," Ray mouthed silently, struggling for breath. His eyelids drooped and his breathing was weak as the researcher fought for consciousness. "Enough!" Sherbet screamed over the cries, throwing themselves at Athena. Athena lost their grip on Ray and was sent tumbling backwards, directly into the rift. Jamie screamed, throwing Easton off of themselves and sending a fist flailing into their sibling's jaw. Easton dropped to the ground, head reeling from the impact. Jamie threw themselves from the wall towards the massive black abyss, reaching out desperately. Their hand closed around Athena's wrist at the last second as they were lost to the void. Jamie felt the front half of his body lose contact with the ground, with the world itself as he hung over the emptiness. Hands grabbed at his shirt, nails lashing at his skin and clawing at his face and his hair as Jamie tried desperately to pull both himself and Athena backwards, attempting to drag them back up over the edge. Jamie screamed inaudibly as they looked back at Ray, who looked back at them with a hazy, unsteady awareness. Ray looked around blearily, desperately trying to blink away the film he could feel across his right eye, gummy and scratchy beneath his eyelid. He could feel the burning in his infected left eye. He could hear the voices, no longer solely in his mind, but given form in the void, begging, pleading with him to continue the ritual. His green eye felt like a ball of fire forced into his skull and burning away at his skin through the infection. It was a physical tether between himself and whatever was on the other side of that. Ray looked up as the realization of it all struck him, and he locked eyes with his pleading assistant. "Please," Jamie screamed at Ray over the noise. "Please, make it stop." Jamie slid across the floor, tugged further over the edge of the void by something on the other side, and they reeled back, desperate to get away from the darkness which already consumed their arms almost up to their shoulders. Jamie felt something else grab onto their arms, warm fingers in an endless cold expanse of black. Their breathing was rapid and shallow, and their vision was blurring with the effort exerted to keep their grip on Athena. Fear gripped his heart tighter than the hands which gripped his arms. Jamie couldn't let go. He couldn't lose Athena to this. Not now. Neither of us are going to lose the other again. Ray pulled himself upwards unsteadily and tried to move towards Jamie. He watched as David writhed on the floor, trying to get away from the claws cutting at his arms and legs. He tried to grab onto Ray for leverage and missed. Ray reached out a hand towards Jamie, desperate to help them pull Athena back out. The moment his hand reached Jamie's leg, however, Sherbet knocked into his side, sending both of them crashing into a wall. "You won't ruin this!" Sherbet screamed, clambering on top of Ray to pin him down. "You can't ruin this now." They brought down their fist into Ray's skull, and the anthropologist's vision blurred under the impact. Sherbet hit them again, harder this time. Ray felt his nose crack beneath his best friend's knuckles as he struggled desperately to fight back, blood streaming over his face. In a wild, jerking movement, Ray kicked up with his legs, sending Sherbet toppling to the side as he scrambled away across the floor. He cupped a hand over his eye and watched in horror as Jamie slipped further, being pulled deeper into the void, into the terminus, into the end. The burning pain in his eye, dull before by his trance, was now excruciating. His eye. If the infection was what tethered him to the end. Ray could feel how important his eye was. He could feel it in the way that Endirion screamed in his mind as he considered his growing idea. Ray shivered violently at the thought of what he was about to do. Except he didn't have a choice. He had to do this. For Jamie and for Athena. For everyone. Ray's cupped fingers slid down ever so slightly, fingernails resting below his brow. And he curled them, digging into his skin. Ray screamed, doubling over as he forced his fingers under his eyelids and into his socket. He felt the flesh tear beneath his nails and the blood gather within his hands. He felt the burning pain reaching an unbearable level as he desperately clawed his own eye out of his skull. There was a large mass of shapes which moved in his blurry vision. Ray was vaguely aware of Sherbet screaming somewhere beyond the pain. Jamie was sent flying backwards, dragging something far too large to be Athena back with them. A single, wretched wail from the other side of the portal echoed from the rift. And then there was the light. Not the harsh, white and purple light of the portal opening, but a violent, explosive red glow. Ray blacked out as his infected green eye was torn completely from his skull, slick and gelatinous in his hand. The building around him exploded.